Have you ever noticed something strange? The moment you stop explaining yourself, people start getting uncomfortable. The moment you stop reacting, they start watching you more carefully. And the moment you stop needing their approval, some of them begin to fear you. Not because you threatened them. Not because you raised your voice. Not because you became cruel. But because in a world built on performance, manipulation, and emotional weakness, a person who cannot be easily read becomes dangerous. That is what most people never say out loud. Society rewards masks. It rewards noise, overexposure, fake confidence, rehearsed humility, and carefully managed appearances. Most people are not powerful. They are only skilled at looking powerful in rooms where everyone is pretending. But the moment a person walks in with real self-command, no performance, no need to impress, no hunger to be understood, the room changes. You can feel it. And that is what this video is really about. Not how to make people afraid of you in some childish, theatrical way. But how certain inner shifts make manipulative people hesitate, make fake people reveal themselves, and make enemies realize you are no longer easy to reach, easy to shake, or easy to control. In this video, we're going to walk through 10 silent signs that make people think twice before crossing you. Not because you became louder, but because you became harder to move. And stay with me until the end, because the final sign is the one most people spend their whole lives avoiding, yet once you develop it, something changes in the way the world responds to you forever. Let's begin. 1. The unpredictability factor. Most people lose power because they become patterns. They always answer the same way. They get offended at the same trigger. They forgive too quickly. They stay available too long. They show their intentions before they act. And after a while, people know exactly where to touch them. That is how manipulation works. It rarely begins with force. It begins with observation. People study your habits. They study your emotional rhythms. They learn when you are lonely, when you want to be liked, when you are insecure, when you are tired, when you are desperate to be seen as good. And once they learn the pattern, they stop respecting you and start managing you. I think many people discover this too late. They think they are being consistent, but in reality, they are becoming readable. And in a social world full of subtle games, being too readable is a liability. Imagine two men on a battlefield. One always attacks the same way, always protects the same side, always reveals his rhythm. His enemy does not need to be stronger than him. He only needs time. The second man is harder to predict. He changes pace. He stays calm. He reveals less. He does not rush to prove himself. Suddenly, the enemy hesitates. That hesitation is power. When people cannot predict your reaction, they cannot comfortably control the emotional outcome. They don't know whether you will respond, disappear, detach, wait, or act at the exact moment they stop expecting it. And that uncertainty unsettles them. So change your patterns. Stop being available on demand. Stop reacting instantly. Stop giving everyone access to your mind. Let people wonder where you stand. Mystery is not a trick. Sometimes it is simply the natural result of self-respect. 2. Fearless eye contact. There is something deeply unsettling about being seen by someone who is not intimidated by appearances. Not stared at with aggression. Not challenged with immature pride. Simply seen. Calm eye contact is one of the oldest silent tests of strength. Because eyes reveal what words try to hide. They reveal anxiety, neediness, fear, submission, and self-doubt. That is why manipulative people often search your face before they search your words. They are not listening to what you say. They are scanning for weakness. Have you ever spoken to someone who kept smiling, kept sounding confident, kept playing the role, but could not hold your gaze? You could feel the instability underneath the surface. And the opposite is true too. When someone looks at you steadily, without nervous movement, without the urge to impress, without shrinking, something in you immediately understands, this person is not easy to bend. Seneca once wrote that brave men rejoice in adversity as brave soldiers triumph in war. Sometimes that bravery is not announced through action. Sometimes it appears first in composure. Real eye contact says, I am here. I am not hiding. I am not asking for permission to exist in this room. And in modern life, this matters more than people realize. At work. In negotiations. In family conflict. In moments when someone tries to belittle you publicly and expects your body to collapse before your mouth even speaks. Hold your gaze a little longer. Not to dominate, but to remain present. Because the person who does not look away too quickly often reveals that they have already stopped fearing judgment. 3. The ability to adapt. Nothing confuses your enemies more than your refusal to break in the place where they expected you to break. That is one of the coldest truths about life. Some people are not shocked when hardship comes to you. They were waiting for it. Some even feel secretly satisfied by it. They assume the pressure will expose your weakness. They assume loss will make you desperate. They assume isolation will make you crawl back. They assume uncertainty will strip away your confidence. And at first, maybe it hurts more than you expected. Maybe there was a season where life felt like being thrown into deep water without warning. A betrayal. A professional setback. Money problems. A humiliating silence from people you once helped. A moment where you realized no one was coming to rescue you. Those moments are brutal because they do not just test your comfort. They test your structure. But here is what enemies rarely understand: pressure does not only destroy. It also reveals who learns fastest. A man thrown into the ocean survives not because he controls the ocean, but because he stops fighting reality long enough to understand it. He learns the rhythm of the waves. He controls his breath. He adapts. And adaptation is terrifying because it means you cannot be permanently cornered. History has never belonged only to the strongest. It has often belonged to the most adaptable. So when life changes, change with it. Learn new skills. Shift strategy. Release dead identities. Stop clinging to versions of yourself that no longer fit the terrain. The person who can adapt without losing his core becomes extremely difficult to defeat. Because he may get hit. But he does not stay in the same form long enough to be finished. 4. Unshakable calm in adversity. Chaos exposes everyone. It exposes who needs control. Who needs attention. Who needs immediate emotional relief. Who only looked strong while life was easy. That is why calm is so threatening. In difficult moments, most people are not watching the problem. They are watching each other. They are looking for signals. Who is panicking? Who is spiraling? Who is blaming? Who is reacting? And the one who stays composed immediately changes the emotional gravity of the room. This kind of calm is not passive. It is not numbness. It is not weakness. It is disciplined emotional sovereignty. Stoicism teaches that our power does not begin with controlling events. It begins with controlling the way we meet them. That sounds simple until life actually corners you. Until a lie is told about you. Until someone disrespects you in public. Until plans collapse. Until the people who praised you in good times disappear in bad times. That is when calm becomes visible. I've always thought this is one of the clearest signs of true inner authority, when the situation gets uglier, but the person does not get smaller. You breathe. You slow down. You refuse to let chaos borrow your nervous system. And suddenly the people around you begin to feel something they cannot explain. Because emotional people rely on infecting others with their panic. If they cannot pull you into their storm, they start losing confidence in their own power. Stay calm longer than expected. That alone will reveal more than arguments ever could. 5. Mastery of self-control. There is no easier person to control than the one who cannot control himself. That is why provocation works so well in modern life. It works online. It works in relationships. It works in offices, families, and public conflict. People press emotional buttons not always because they hate you, but because they want to measure how much access they have to your inner state. If they can make you explode, they can redirect the narrative. If they can make you beg, they can lower your value. If they can make you over-explain, they can turn your sincerity into weakness. That is why self-control is not just a virtue. It is protection. Imagine two men in conflict. One is loud, red-faced, frantic, desperate to win the moment. The other one is still. Listening. Breathing. Choosing his words carefully. Which one looks more dangerous? Which one looks more capable of acting with precision when the emotion clears? Exactly. People fear emotional discipline because they know it cannot be manipulated as easily. When you do not rush into anger, they lose one weapon. When you do not collapse into shame, they lose another. When you pause before reacting, you make room for intelligence. And intelligence is much harder to fight than emotion. So the next time someone tries to pull you into instant reaction, slow everything down. Take the breath. Let the silence stretch. Answer only what deserves an answer. The one who rules himself stops being easy prey for people who only know how to rule through pressure. 6. A deep connection to your values. Many people look strong until they are offered comfort, approval, or escape. Then you find out what they really worship. A man without values can be bought. Maybe not always with money. Sometimes with attention. Sometimes with validation. Sometimes with fear. Sometimes with the simple promise that he will not have to stand alone. That is why rooted people are rare. When you know what you stand for, life becomes harder in some ways, but cleaner in others. You stop negotiating with your conscience every time pressure enters the room. You stop adjusting your identity to match whoever is in front of you. And that consistency is deeply unsettling to people who live by image instead of principle. Seneca wrote that he who is brave is free. I think what he understood is that freedom does not begin when life becomes easy. It begins when your values become more important than your comfort. And in today's society, that is almost rebellious. A society built on convenience will always find integrity inconvenient. A fake world hates the person who cannot be bribed by applause. When people realize your choices come from conviction, not mood, not insecurity, not crowd pressure, they become careful around you. Because they understand something fundamental, you are no longer available for quiet corruption. And once a person cannot be internally purchased, he becomes harder to externally control. 7. The ability to walk away without looking back. Some of the strongest moments in life are completely silent. No speech. No revenge. No dramatic exit. Just clarity. Walking away is powerful because it breaks an invisible contract many people thought they had with you. The contract that says, you will stay and absorb the disrespect, stay and defend yourself endlessly, stay and keep trying to be understood, stay and make their chaos your responsibility. When you walk away, that contract dies. And that frightens people more than anger sometimes. Because anger still means engagement. Anger still means they matter enough to disturb you. But detachment? Detachment sends a colder message. It says, this no longer deserves access to my time, my mind, or my energy. That is why some enemies provoke harder when they feel you slipping out of emotional reach. They are not always trying to hurt you. Sometimes they are trying to re-establish relevance. Do not give it to them. Leave what degrades you. Leave what drains you. Leave what repeatedly demands your dignity as the entry fee. Walking away is not weakness. It is evidence that you finally understand value. And the person who can leave without turning back often reveals that he has stopped negotiating with what should have been beneath him all along. 8. The art of silence. Silence is unbearable to people who survive by managing perception. Because silence cannot be easily edited. When you explain too much, defend too much, justify too much, you hand people material. You give them pieces to twist, emotions to inspect, insecurity to smell. But silence deprives them of access. Silence makes them sit with their own projections. And most people are deeply disturbed by what they project onto a quiet person. Have you ever noticed how quickly people start inventing stories when you stop narrating yourself for them? He must be angry. He's hiding something. He thinks he's better than us. Why isn't he reacting? Exactly. People talk most when they have the least real information. And silence forces that truth into the open. This does not mean becoming cold and unreachable in every moment. It means learning that not everything deserves commentary. Not every accusation deserves correction. Not every misunderstanding deserves your labor. Not every opinion deserves your energy. Speak less. Observe more. Let people reveal themselves in the space your silence creates. Because silence has a strange way of turning social performance into self-exposure. And once people realize they cannot pull your inner world out of you on command, they begin to feel the distance between their noise and your control. 9. Unshakable trust in your own strength. There comes a point in life when borrowed confidence is no longer enough. Praise is unreliable. Support is seasonal. People believe in you until believing in you costs them something. And if your confidence depends entirely on what comes from outside, life will keep humiliating you until you build something internal. This is why trust in your own strength matters. Not arrogance. Not ego. Not the loud performance of certainty. I mean that quieter form of confidence that comes from surviving things you once thought would destroy you. The kind that says, I may not control every outcome, but I trust my ability to meet what comes. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, war, pressure, disease, and responsibility on a scale most people cannot imagine. Yet over and over, what stands out is not emotional spectacle, but steadiness. A man anchored in purpose becomes difficult to intimidate because he is no longer asking the world every day whether he is enough. When your enemies sense that kind of trust in you, they feel something shift. They realize your center is not in their hands. Their approval cannot inflate you. Their rejection cannot erase you. And that is when fear changes sides. Because people only comfortably attack what they think will doubt itself after the blow. 10. The absolute lack of fear. This is the final sign. And it is the hardest one. Because almost everything in society is built on fear. Fear of exclusion. Fear of failure. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of losing status. Fear of being judged. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being chosen. That fear shapes careers, relationships, personalities, and even moral compromises. Many people are not living by principle. They are negotiating with fear every single day. So when someone appears who is no longer ruled by it, something primal happens in the room. Not a reckless person. Not a foolish person. A person who has simply made peace with uncertainty. That is different. A fearless man is not fearless because he believes nothing can happen to him. He is fearless because he has accepted that life can take many things from him, but it does not get to own his soul in the process. He can lose and still remain himself. He can be rejected and still remain clear. He can stand alone and still remain whole. And once a person reaches that point, manipulation begins to fail. You cannot easily threaten someone who has already faced discomfort. You cannot easily control someone who has already made peace with loss. You cannot easily shame someone who no longer worships social approval. This is why the most dangerous person in the room is rarely the loudest. It is usually the one who has already confronted fear privately, and no longer needs to perform strength publicly. That kind of man does not chase power. But power gathers around him anyway. Closing recap. So if you want to understand why enemies fear certain people without a single word, it comes down to this. They are unpredictable. They hold their gaze. They adapt. They remain calm in adversity. They master themselves. They live by values. They know when to walk away. They understand silence. They trust their own strength. And above all, they are no longer ruled by fear. But remember this carefully. The goal is not to make people afraid of you. That is the obsession of insecure men. The real goal is deeper than that. To become so internally stable that deception cannot easily hook you. So clear that chaos cannot easily own you. So grounded that fake people feel exposed in your presence without you saying very much at all. That is not intimidation. That is self-mastery. And in a world addicted to performance, self-mastery looks almost supernatural. If this spoke to something you've been feeling lately, let me know in the comments. Which of these 10 signs do you think is the hardest to develop in real life? And if you're building that kind of quiet strength in a world full of noise, subscribe and stay close. Because out here, the loudest people are rarely the strongest. The strongest are usually the ones who no longer need to prove it.